Let's take a step back in time to the 1970s, an era before smartphones, streaming, and instant everything. Life moved a little slower, and the small things made a big impact. From rotary phones and CB radios to lava lamps and shag carpets, everyday experiences were full of charm, patience, and personality. Kids spent Saturdays glued to cartoons, families waited in long lines for gas, and music wasn't just played, it was earned on vinyl and 8 tracks. Join us as we revisit the quirks, rituals, and unforgettable moments that made growing up in the 70s a unique, hands-on experience. Today's kids might not believe it, but there was a time before smartphones when calling someone meant actual effort. Enter the rotary phone, the heavyweight of 1970s communication. It wasn't just a phone, it was a piece of furniture. Built like a tank and attached to a curly cord that somehow always ended up in knots, it sat proudly in almost every home. To dial, you'd stick your finger into the wheel, spin it around, and wait for it to click back, one digit at a time. Mess up halfway? Start over. No caller ID, no contacts. Every ring was a mystery. Maybe it was your best friend. Maybe it was that one talkative relative. You couldn't know until you pick up. Before remote controls took over, changing the TV channel in the 1970s was basically a mini workout. TVS had big, chunky dials that made a loud click every time you turned them. If you wanted to see what else was on, you had to actually get up, walk over, and twist that dial yourself, sometimes scrolling through all 13 available channels before settling on one. And if someone wanted a different show? Congratulations! You are now the human remote control. Speaking from personal experience, usually, it was the youngest kid who got stuck with that job. Change the channel became a household command, and during commercial breaks, you could bet someone was already yelling it. In the 1970s, Saturday morning was sacred. It was the one time of the week when kids ruled the living room. You'd wake up at dawn, pour a mountain of sugary cereal, and plop down for hours of pure animated cinema. Shows like Scooby-Doo, Looney Tunes, The Flintstones, and Super Friends made those mornings feel like a weekly holiday. That's what made Saturday mornings special, a reward for surviving the school week, a few golden hours before the news or soap operas took over. Today's kids can stream cartoons anytime, but they'll never know the joy of racing to the TV in pajamas just to catch that opening theme song. Long before phones started telling us where to turn, people had to rely on actual paper maps. Those giant, fold-out puzzles that tested your patience and your sense of direction. In the 1970s, road trips began with an atlas the size of a newspaper spread across the car hood and tracing the route with your finger. Miss a turn? Well, there was no recalculating. You either figured it out yourself or pulled over to ask a stranger for directions. Family road trips often turned into comedy shows of confusion and blame. The driver would yell, "Left or right?" while the person in the passenger seat frantically flipped pages, trying to find the right highway. It was chaos. Music in the 1970s had weight, literally. The soundtracks of the decade lived on vinyl records and 8-track tapes, each one a physical piece of your personality. If you wanted to hear a song, you didn't just hit play. You'd slide a record from its sleeve, place it gently on the turntable, and lower the needle with care. Then came that soft crackle, the little prelude that told you something good was about to begin. Vinyl ruled the home, while 8-track tapes dominated the car. Listening to music was more than background noise, it was an experience. You read album covers, admired the art, memorized lyrics, and argued with friends about which record was best. Taking photos in the 1970s was a real exercise in patience and a little bit of faith. You'd frame your shot, press the shutter, and that was it. No retakes, no filters, no way to check if everyone was actually smiling. You just had to hope for the best. And because film was limited, every click mattered. You didn't waste a shot unless it was worth it. When the roll was done, you'd drop it off at a photo lab or drugstore in that iconic yellow Kodak envelope, and then wait. Sometimes a few days, sometimes weeks. The moment you finally opened that packet of freshly developed photos was pure excitement. And those envelopes? They became family albums, passed down and revisited for decades. It's wild to think about now, but in the 1970s, smoking wasn't just accepted, it was an expected part of daily life. Lighting up indoors didn't raise an eyebrow. People smoked in restaurants, offices, movie theaters, hospitals, and yes, even on airplanes. The idea of smoking sections was laughable. On flights, passengers puffed away while flight attendants served drinks, and by the time you landed, your clothes, hair, and luggage all smelled like an ashtray. Cigarette ads were everywhere too. Glossy magazine spreads and TV commercials showing athletes, celebrities, and yes, even doctors smiling with a cigarette in hand. It wasn't until health studies became impossible to ignore that attitudes shifted, leading to bans throughout the 80s and 90s. Before cell phones made calling so easy, payphones were how people stayed connected. You'd spot them everywhere, on street corners, outside gas stations, in diners and malls. If you needed to call someone, you'd dig through your pockets for loose change, drop in a few coins, and hope the line wasn't busy. If you didn't have any coins, there was always the backup, a collect call. The operator would ask the person on the other end if they'd accept the charges, but clever kids found loopholes, sneaking messages into the operator prompt like, "Collect call from mom? Pick me up at the mall." It was practically an art form. Payphones were landmarks, check-in spots, and quiet corners for late-night conversations. Imagine turning on your TV and having just 3 options. That was life in the 1970s. ABC, CBS, and NBC were the big 3, and they ruled American living rooms. No Netflix, no cable lineup, no endless scroll of what should we watch? But that limitation also created something special, a shared experience. When a hit show aired, everyone was watching. Miss it, and you were out of every conversation the next day. Families rearranged their evenings around TV schedules and gathered in front of the set together. A simple ritual that made watching TV feel special, something that modern-day streaming cannot recreate. Writing in the 1970s meant wrestling with a typewriter, a heavy, clacking beast that made every keystroke feel important. That unmistakable clack, clack, ding echoed through offices, classrooms, and bedrooms across America. There was no delete key or spell check. Every typo was a small disaster, forcing you to start over or dab it away with a glob of correction fluid, the miracle fix of its time. Typing needed rhythm and precision, setting margins manually, feeding sheets of paper, and striking each key with real force. The sound of that final ding at the end of a line was like a tiny victory. The arrival of personal computers meant you could suddenly edit without tearing pages from the roller or smudging ink across your fingers, making typewriters obsolete. Before the time of Amazon and one-click checkouts, there was the Sears catalog, the original online shopping experience in printed form. This thick, glossy book arrived in mailboxes across America, offering an entire world of goods at your fingertips. It was a cultural event. Families would gather around the kitchen table, turning its heavy pages filled with everything from shiny bicycles and record players to furniture, power tools, and even ready-to-build houses. Kids circled their dream toys in red pen, while parents eyed new appliances or holiday outfits. It brought the shopping mall right to your living room, no matter how far you live from the city. When streaming platforms didn't exist, movie night meant piling into the car and heading to the local drive-in theater. These outdoor cinemas were more than just places to watch films. They were social events. Families, friends, and couples gathered beneath the open sky, parking in rows facing a giant glowing screen. You'd hook a small metal speaker to your car window, settle in with popcorn and sodas, and get ready for the show. As land prices rose and home entertainment grew, drive-ins slowly disappeared. Yet for anyone who grew up in that era, they remain a nostalgic icon, a mix of community, fun, and the magic of watching a movie under the stars. Before cable and streaming made everything crystal clear, watching TV in the 1970s meant wrestling with the antenna. those shiny metal rabbit ears on top of almost every set. Getting a good signal was a full family event. Someone would twist the antenna while another shouted, "Wait, go back, right there," as the picture flipped between fuzzy snow and perfect clarity. Some swore aluminum foil on the tips made it better. And when rooftop antennas came into play, dads became part-time engineers, climbing up in the rain while kids yelled directions from the window. By the 1980s, cable ended the struggle, but those rabbit ears still capture a time when TV watching was truly a team effort. In the 1970s, hearing the clink of glass bottles on your doorstep meant the milkman was making his rounds, leaving fresh bottles of milk neatly packed in an insulated box by the door. Each bottle came capped with a thin paper seal, and when he arrived, he'd swap out the empties from the day before for new ones, still cold from the truck. It was a system that just worked. Kids especially loved racing to grab the bottles first, shaking the thick cream that floated to the top before breakfast. And because milkmen often served the same routes for years, many families knew them by name. These kinds of personal and traditional rituals made the 70s a significantly kinder and softer time. Driving in the 1970s meant doing everything by hand, literally. Want some fresh air? You'd grab that little metal handle on the door and crank it round and round until the window slid down. On a hot day, that turned into a full-on arm workout. Every kid in the back seat fought for control of their window, and heaven help you if it got stuck halfway. Safety standards were another story. Most back seats didn't even have seatbelts yet, and no one really thought twice about it. Kids sprawled out, leaned against the doors, or stuck their heads into the wind just to feel the rush. It sounds wild today, but that freedom was part of the charm. In the 1970s, if you had a school project or needed to learn about something, you didn't type it into a search bar. You headed straight to the local library and prepared for a mission. You'd start at the massive wooden card catalog, flipping through drawer after drawer of handwritten index cards until you found the right book. Then came the hunt through the shelves, stacking heavy hardcovers in your arms and hoping they had what you needed. If the book was already checked out, tough luck, you came back another day. Librarians were like living search engines, guiding you with expertise and patience. It was slower, sure, but more rewarding too. In a time when most photos took weeks to develop, Polaroid cameras felt like a glimpse into the future. By the 1970s, they had turned photography into something immediate and exciting. You'd line up your shot, press the button, and in a soft mechanical whir, the camera would spit out a square print still blank, waiting to come to life. Everyone would huddle around, waving the photo impatiently as the image slowly appeared, revealing faces, colors, and little imperfections that made each picture unique. Polaroids captured real life as it was. No editing, no filters, no do-overs, just a single, honest frame of a moment that could never be repeated. Before classrooms had DVDs or streaming screens and projectors, the real star of movie day was the school film projector. These bulky metal machines would hum and clatter as teachers carefully threaded long reels of film through their spinning gears. The room would darken, the bulb would flicker to life, and that soft whirring sound meant one thing: it was time for a movie. For students, it was the best kind of break from routine. Reel-to-reel movies weren't limited to schools either. They were used in small community theaters and by hobbyists for home movie nights. Those flickering reels turned learning, and even simple storytelling, into something magical. In the 1970s, America ran on gasoline until suddenly it didn't. The oil crisis hit, and overnight, something as simple as filling your tank became a test of patience and luck. Long lines snaked around gas stations for blocks, with drivers idling for hours just to buy a few precious gallons. Some states introduced odd-even rationing, where your license plate number decided which days you could fill up. People in line chatted with neighbors, swapped rumors about which stations still had gas, and found small ways to pass the time. It was shared frustration, but it oddly brought communities together. The average 70s living room was built around lava lamps and shag carpets, bold, wild, and colorful all in two. The lava lamp, with its slow, floating blobs of color, was a mini light show. Placed on a bedside table or in a dark corner, it cast a soft, mesmerizing glow that screamed creativity, relaxation, and pure cool. Shag carpets, on the other hand, turned every floor into a playground. Thick, fuzzy, and usually bright orange, mustard yellow, or avocado green, it made sprawling out to watch TV or play games a total joy. Walking across it felt like sinking into a cloud, and yes, it was a vacuum's worst nightmare. Homes weren't minimalist or polished. They were expressions of personality. Instead of smartphones, apps, and social media, truckers and road travelers had CB radios. These citizen band radios were the original social network on wheels. Truckers used them to share traffic updates, warn about speed traps, and swap stories to make long hauls less lonely. Families, road trippers, and hobbyists all joined in, picking playful handles like Roadrunner or Midnight Rambler to chat with strangers across the airwaves. Pop culture helped, too. Movies like Smokey and the Bandit and shows like The Dukes of Hazzard made CB culture feel cool. The CB community looked out for each other, offering help to stranded drivers and keeping spirits up on long, lonely stretches of highway. Every household had metal or plastic ice cube trays. You'd carefully fill each compartment, trying not to spill water everywhere, slide the tray into the freezer, and then wait. Hours, sometimes longer. The real challenge came when the cubes were finally frozen. Metal trays had levers that pinched fingers or got stuck halfway, while plastic trays often refused to budge, cracking under pressure as you twisted this way and that, but the cube stubbornly stayed put. There was a strange satisfaction in the effort. Twisting the tray, hearing that satisfying clink as cubes fell into your glass, made a simple drink feel earned. Hearing your favorite song wasn't always just a click away, it took patience. In the 1970s, music fans spent hours glued to the radio, finger hovering over the record button on their cassette decks, waiting for that one track to play. There was no repeat, no replay, and no skipping. You had to wait, sometimes hours, sometimes the next day. For many, that waiting became part of the thrill. You'd call the station to request a song, then sit by the radio, hoping it actually got played. And when it finally did, pure victory. Recording it onto a cassette, DJ chatter and all, felt like owning a small piece of magic. Back in the 70s, kids and adults checked the mailbox daily, hoping for a handwritten note from a friend, family member, or pen pal. Each envelope carried a piece of someone's world, their handwriting, doodles, maybe even a faint scent of perfume or aftershave. Writing letters was a ritual. You'd pick your stationery, sit down with a pen, and craft your words carefully, then wait days or even weeks for a reply. That anticipation made every letter feel meaningful and lasting. Mail connected people across distances in a slower, more intentional rhythm of life. Back then, one envelope could brighten your whole day, or ruin it. A reminder that someone, somewhere, was thinking of you in one way or another. Every trip to the grocery store, gas station, or department store used to come with a reward, a handful of green stamps tucked into your hand. Families would carefully lick and stick them into thick books, slowly filling them up like tiny trophies of thrift and dedication. Once the books were full, you could trade them in for all sorts of goodies: kitchen gadgets, toys, small appliances, or even furniture. Coupons played a similar role. Clipped from newspapers or magazines, they were organized into envelopes or drawers, waiting for the perfect moment to be redeemed. In an era before online codes and instant discounts, green stamps and coupons transformed everyday errands into small adventures. Cassette tapes, the ultimate symbol of 1970s and 80s music culture. Before Spotify playlists and Apple Music, these little plastic rectangles were how you made a playlist. You'd sit by the radio for hours, finger hovering over the record button, waiting for your favorite song to come on so you could tape it. And if you messed up the timing, tough luck. Rewinding was its own kind of patience test. Either you waited for the tape to whir backwards in your Walkman, or, if you were smart, you used a pencil to spin the reels faster, and nothing, absolutely nothing, was more heartbreaking than your tape getting eaten by the player, your favorite album suddenly a tangled mess of brown ribbon. Movie night in the 1970s meant heading to the local video rental store or even renting film reels and projectors for the weekend. When VHS and Betamax tapes arrived, it felt groundbreaking. You could finally watch a movie whenever you wanted if someone else hadn't rented it first. The whole thing was a ritual, browsing aisles of colorful covers, debating what to pick, and walking out with those bulky plastic cases. And of course, the golden rule, be kind, rewind. Forgetting could actually cost you a fine. At home, the dim lights, soft VHS hum, and shared excitement made movie night special, an experience streaming could never truly replace. Believe it or not, there was a time when TV didn't run all night. In the 1970s, when midnight hit, stations would end their broadcasts with something called a sign-off. The national anthem played, a waving flag appeared, maybe a "Good Night America" message, and then silence. The screen turned to static, that soft, hissing snow filling dark living rooms. For kids who stayed up too late, it felt eerie, almost haunting, like the world itself had gone to sleep. It was a nightly ritual, marking the end of another day. But when 24-hour news and cable networks arrived, the sign-off quietly faded away, taking that strange, peaceful moment with it. Music in the 1970s was a unique experience, and stacking ARM record players made it effortless. These turntables had a metal spindle where you could stack multiple vinyl records, and, after one finished, the next dropped automatically with a soft click. It was the original autoplay, long before streaming. People loved it, because you could keep the music flowing, no need to jump up between songs. You'd stack up the Beatles, Fleetwood Mac, or the Rolling Stones and let the night play out. Sure, records sometimes slipped or needles scratched, but that was part of the charm. Watching the arm move, hearing that warm crackle, it was pure 1970s magic. Before smartphones or Google, the phone book was the ultimate way to find anyone's number. Every home had one thick, heavy directory sitting right beside the landline. Need a plumber? Flip to pee? Want to call your friend's house? Just look up their last name and scroll through hundreds of tiny printed numbers. It might sound tedious now, but it was pretty convenient, like holding your whole neighborhood in your hands. Local businesses would even pay extra for bold print or bigger ads, the old-school version of Google Ads. Of course, privacy wasn't really a concern back then. Your name, address, and number were printed for the whole town to see. Remember when every home had a full set of encyclopedias lined up proudly on a shelf? Before Google and smartphones, those thick books were our window to the world. Families bought them from smooth-talking salesmen, believing they were investing in knowledge. Kids used them for homework, parents browsed them out of curiosity, and guests admired them like trophies. Each glossy page smelled of ink and discovery. But as the internet took over, these once precious volumes turned into dusty relics, stacked in basements or sold at garage sales. Still, there's something special about flipping a real page to find an answer. Photography wasn't about endless selfies. It was about making every shot count. Film cameras ruled, and if you wanted to take pictures indoors or at night, you needed flash cubes. These little square attachments plugged into the top of your camera, each side holding a tiny bulb. After every photo, the cube would rotate, giving you 4 bright flashes per cube. You could even smell the faint burnt odor after each flash. That was the bulb bursting inside. And touching it afterward? A quick way to learn a hot lesson. There were no previews or retakes, just the anticipation of waiting for your film to develop. Every picture truly felt like a moment worth keeping. Polyester ruled the fashion world in the 70s. Shiny shirts, flared pants, and loud patterns were everywhere. Polyester wasn't just a fabric, it was a lifestyle. People loved it because it was cheap, wrinkle-free, and practically indestructible. You could dance all night at the disco or stuff it in a suitcase, and it would still look brand new. Entire wardrobes were made of it. Bright leisure suits, dresses, even bed sheets. It felt futuristic, almost space age. The catch? Polyester didn't breathe. Wearing it in summer felt like being wrapped in plastic, and the static cling was relentless. By the 80s, cotton and wool made a comeback. But for a while, polyester defined the cool, shiny, synthetic spirit of the 70s. Before everyone had a phone in their pocket, there was one shared household phone, usually in the kitchen or hallway, with that long, tangled cord. When it rang, the whole house went on alert. Teenagers sprinted to grab it first, praying it was for them. And once you were on, privacy didn't exist. Parents could quietly pick up another receiver, or a sibling would yell, "Get off! I'm expecting a call!" If someone hogged the line too long, frustration spread fast. No call waiting, no second line, one connection for everyone. That single phone brought the household together, for better or worse. Every ring meant excitement, gossip, or pure chaos. There was nothing quite like opening a fresh box of cereal and hearing that faint rattle inside. Hidden beneath the sugary flakes was the real prize, a tiny toy waiting to be found. It could be a plastic figure, a sticker, or a flimsy spinner that barely worked. But to a kid, it felt like striking gold. Mornings turned into little adventures as children dug through the box, scattering cereal everywhere while parents just sighed. Eventually, safety rules and marketing changes ended the cereal box surprise. But that tiny toy made breakfast feel like magic. There was a time when watching TV meant sitting through every commercial, no skip buttons or next episode countdowns. Families made the most of it with snack runs, bathroom breaks, and quick seat swaps before the show returned. Some jingles were catchy enough to live in your head for days, while others you loved to hate. But those ads gave TV its rhythm, little pauses that built excitement and kept everyone talking. Streaming today might be smoother, but it's missing that shared break, that moment of togetherness that made watching TV feel like a cozy weekly ritual. Nothing beat the feeling of switching on that humming black and white TV and watching the world come alive in shades of gray. The picture might have been fuzzy and the sound a bit off, but it didn't matter because it was yours. Kids would twist dials, adjust rabbit ears, and sometimes give the set a gentle smack just to get the picture right. Saturday morning cartoons looked just as magical without color, and late-night shows felt like secret adventures. Those bulky little TVs made you work for a clear signal, but that was part of the charm. Every flicker felt special. There was a time when seeing kids riding in the back of a pickup truck didn't raise an eyebrow. No seatbelts, no helmets, just wind in their hair and laughter trailing behind. Families would pile in for short trips or summer fairs, sitting on hay bales or toolboxes, gripping the sides as the truck rumbled down the road. It felt like pure freedom, a mix of recklessness and joy that defined childhood adventure. Eventually, safety laws ended those carefree rides, but the memories remain. Sun on your face, friends by your side, and the hum of the road beneath your feet. Before banking apps and instant transfers, depositing a check was an event. You'd head to the bank, fill out a slip, and stand in line beneath the hum of ceiling fans and the smell of paper and ink. The teller often knew your name, greeting you warmly as they stamped and counted each deposit by hand. It was slower but felt personal, almost ceremonial. People kept ledgers, balanced checkbooks, and took pride in doing it right. Now, a phone tap does it all in seconds, but that small sense of connection and routine, that's something technology can't truly replace. There was a time when paying for groceries or gas meant pulling out your checkbook instead of a card. You'd carefully write the date, amount, and signature, then tear the check and hand it over while the cashier verified your ID. It took a little patience, but nobody minded because that was just how life worked. Later, you'd sit down and balance your checkbook, making sure every number matched. When debit cards and digital payments arrived, checks disappeared. It was slower, but it made spending feel intentional. Those were the little joys and frustrations of life in the 1970s. For more nostalgic trips like this, check out our video on 18 old American jobs that sound fake but were totally real.